So here we are in New York City, and we've got some questions for people walking the streets of New York, specifically about God, faith, and religion. And I'm here with Edith, who's going to share with us his views on how he sees things. Obviously, the main character of the New Testament is Jesus. What do you think about him? Who is he?
Okay. Okay, so everybody loves Jesus, right? They think of the gospel as like the good word, right? You can get saved, you can go to heaven, yay. But what they don't tell you is that there is not a similar understanding of like the afterlife in the Jewish sense until Jesus comes along and says, okay, yeah, you can go to heaven, but you also can go to hell now. Which like I think turns the whole idea of like the gospel on its head, you know?
If I could show you from the Hebrew scriptures where this is a very clear idea, what would that mean to you?
It would mean a lot. Could you like talk about it a little?
Yeah, so Daniel...
Talk about what, like how they're seeing the afterlife pre-Christ.
Okay, so there's Judaism, for example. The Judaism that we have today is rabbinic Judaism. What I mean by that, it's a Judaism that is controlled by the rabbis. In the same way that much of Christianity is controlled by Roman Catholicism, the Pope, and so on. And so they have different views in the scripture. So there's a number of places in scripture, specifically this one. In the book of Daniel, it says that there will be a resurrection, some to everlasting life and some to everlasting contempt, which is a very clear statement from the Old Testament that there's heaven and hell in a sense.
And in a similar way that the Christians perceive it, yeah?
Yes, because ultimately it's about the resurrection, right? It's about those who will all come to life, and there's some who's going to have the good benefits and some who's not. I want to show you this too. This is pretty interesting. You'll like this.
But you, Bethlehem, Ephrathah, though you are little among the thousands of Judah, yet out of you shall come forth to me the one to be ruler in Israel, whose goings forth are from of old, from everlasting.
Right. So this is saying that the ruler, the king of Israel, will come from...
Oh, Bethlehem, right? Yeah,
okay. This was written 700 years before Jesus was born.
Yeah.
Do you think that having prophecies like this that are so clear are worth anything, or is it just maybe coincidence?
I think it depends on your reading. I think like there's a lot of Christian retroactive reading where you're finding passages like that which are indicating somebody else coming along, namely Jesus. But you don't necessarily have to read it that way. And the Bible is so huge that either way, you're doing a certain kind of reading with certain kind of editing, and you can lean emphasis on where you'd like, depending on like your theological concerns.
Right. So there's a lot of bias, right? People read into stuff.
Well, not necessarily bias, just commitments, theological commitments that you have when you're reading a sacred text that like are gonna shade how you're reading it.
Yeah, sure. Do you know what Jesus said when he died on the cross? Any idea?
No, go.
So he said, my God, why have you forsaken me? It's a pretty famous thing that he said on the cross. This is Psalm 22. Yeah, read that.
Yeah.
My God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from me, so far from the words of my groaning? And this is actually written by David. And if you read it, we won't read it the whole thing now, but it's incredible because here, for example, it says, many bulls surround me, the bulls of Bashan. And look at this. Dogs have surrounded me. A band of evil men have encircled me. They have pierced my hands and feet.
Wow.
Crucifixion hadn't been invented when David wrote this, which was 1,000 years prior. I mean, in fact, he says what they do is I can count my bones. Neat. They divide my garments among them and cast lots from my clothing. This is written.
Yeah.
I know. That's not. Yeah. So that's not interpretation. Like if we know the story of Jesus, at least where he was crucified, he cries out, they pierce his hands and feet. The Roman soldiers, they cast lots for his clothing. Is that?
Yeah, sure. No, yeah. I mean, you can read it that way for sure.
Yeah. So the reason why we like to have these conversations, because I don't think a lot of people know why Jesus is the guy. You know what I'm saying? It's like there's a lot of Christians who are like, oh, I believe in Jesus. And it's like, well, why is he?
Yeah.
Right. And so
he's the son of David.
The son of David. How do we know he's the son of David? He was born in Bethlehem. That was one of the requirements that we just read there. What is your worldview? Like, what do we do with the problem of evil?
With the problem of evil? Oh, well... This is where I like to diverge from like Abrahamic faith or monotheist faith, which has like a very dualist moral system, good and evil, right and wrong. I mean, this sets up like if you're, I'm walking God's path, for example, or I'm not. And I prefer the way, say, like, there's this Taoist image, I think, in the Zhuangzi where he's talking about you need to grow the flower, you need the manure. You need And so evil and good are not necessarily, separated, or there's may not be a gulf between them. And I think like that's a really important way to construe things, where you're not necessarily making a moral claim, you're just recognizing different things as serving different purposes to cultivate, whatever you love, and that it's all sort of wrapped up in the same thing.
Are you kind of saying like if we don't struggle, right, we can't appreciate the good things? I mean, if things are good all the time and we think that's how the world is, right, you kind of lose the value of what we have. Is that right?
Sure, yeah, and also that like what we might consider the evil parts are like, necessary to that, and nurture it in their own kind of way, and so it's all a lot more jumbled up than it appears.
Do you have a view of the afterlife? Because you said like, okay, let's not be so dualistic of heaven and hell. Do you have a view of the afterlife? Like what happens to people when they die? Do they just become flowers? I mean, what's next?
I have no clue what is next. Yeah, no, I've never really found an answer that fits the afterlife question.
Yeah.
I like the idea, Nietzsche's idea of the eternal recurrence, which is basically that if things are really infinite, then you've lived everything infinitely many times. So you're thinking about like the life that you're living now as not something singular, but as just a repetition of 1,000 other times that you've done it, and that you're doing that constantly forever. And so like whatever mode of existence is possible or that you might be able to imagine is just being repeated over and over again.
Yeah, although I think that God said of Nietzsche, like Nietzsche's dead. Is that true?
Well, Nietzsche's dead, so is God. Well,
he may.
I would say the G word.
Nietzsche is dead, but the belief in God.
May reign. Yep, God may reign.
Okay, very good. Is there enough goodness in people, like to bring peace? Like ultimately, you write about people.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so you think we can get there by just doing good things?
Yeah, I think we can get there by also creating environments that foster goodness in people.
Can you give me an example of anywhere where that works?
Anywhere that it works well. I think something like the family, where there's people that you're committed to, that you care for and participate in a sort of common struggle and aid and care. I think like a family is generally a decent environment to raise the kinds of living, or you'd hope it would be, right? That you might want to see, caring about people, loving for people, helping them get through life together.
Don't you think that human beings, essentially, we all have a problem? And the problem is that while that's true, what you're saying is that we should do that none of us truly can get to that place where we do that sacrificially. In other words, give other people more than what we want because of just the way we are.
Well, I don't think that sacrificial quality necessarily has to be involved. Where I think like, if you think of it as in a relationship or gardening or something, you're not really, it doesn't feel like a sacrifice when you're doing it. You're watching something grow and you're caring for it. And we all make sacrifices for our values or, more often against our values, sacrifices to make decisions that we wouldn't.
So this is what I see different. This is just my opinion. I want you to know what you think. Like the natural order of things, if I plant something in good soil, right, and I water it, and there's sunshine, and it gets everything it needs, it'll produce good fruit.
Yeah.
You'd expect that as the natural order of things. But for humans, that is not the case. A human can have the perfect environment, have everything they need, and they still turn out to be very different.
We're growing the wrong crops. You know what I mean? Instead of growing broccoli and spinach and things that sustain us, we're growing, poison. We're in New York City. This is a strange place. Like, right in Times Square, where you could see all the advertisements and like basically the culmination of like this whole project that we've entered into. This place, like any other place, like makes people live certain ways. And I think like it's really, if you build the structures and the environment to like love instead of have to struggle and like work for $1 and ignore the homeless guy on the street. It's like then you have an environment where you can start caring and where care is like built into its very fabric, which I think is like what we're all trying to do, failing at it mostly. I mean, we're inherently good.
Inherently good?
Yeah, we're inherently good.
How old are you?
28.
28. Okay. I wish we could be 20 years later and just have the same conversation.
We could.
We could. And maybe see. You're just going to tell us what you think. That's what's important. Okay. So here's text.
Behold, my servant shall deal prudently. He shall be exalted and extolled and be very high. Just as many were astonished at you, so his visage was marred more than any man, and his form more than the sons of men. So shall he sprinkle many nations. Kings shall shut their mouths at him, for what had not been told them they shall see, and what they had not heard they shall consider. Who has believed our report, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? For he shall grow up before him as a tender plant, and as a root out of dry ground. He has no form or comeliness, and when we see him, there is no beauty that we should desire him. He is despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief, and we hid, as it were, our faces from him. He was despised, and we did not esteem him. Surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows, yet we esteemed him stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted. But he was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement for our peace was upon him, and by his stripes we are healed. All we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned every one to his own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. He was led as a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before its shearers is silent, so he opened not his mouth. He was taken from prison and from judgment, and who will declare his generation? For he was cut off from the land of the living. For the transgressions of my people he was stricken. And they made him his grave with the wicked, but with the rich at his death, because he had done no violence, nor was any deceit in his mouth. Yet it pleased the Lord to bruise him. He has put him to grief. When you make his soul an offering for sin, he shall see his seed. He shall prolong his days, and the pleasure of the Lord shall prosper in his hand. He shall see the labor of his soul and be satisfied. By his knowledge my righteous servant shall justify many, for he shall bear their iniquities. Therefore I will divide him a portion with the great, and he shall divide the spoil with the strong, because he poured out his soul unto death, and he was numbered with the transgressors. And he bore the sin of many and made intercession for the transgressors.
Great, awesome. You're a good reader. So who is this about?
Well, it sounds like it's about Christ, and I assume you're going to tell me it's from the Hebrew Bible.
It is from the Hebrew Bible,
wow.
written 800 years before Jesus was even born. And this is a messianic prophecy. It's from Isaiah chapter 53. And this is why I think these, when you go do your religious studies, look at the Old Testament prophecies, because it's not like, oh, it's kind of like, I guess you can fit it in there.
No, I mean, you're right.
Right, and it's very, very clear, even as he was buried in a rich man's tomb, right? So these are interesting.
I wonder how much this influenced the writing of the New Testament, having this knowledge of the...
Well, the New Testament relies much on this.
Yeah, and I just wonder how that might have influenced the way they're writing about it in the New Testament.
Well, the interesting thing is it's not a discussion whether Jesus lived or died. In fact, it's even recorded in the Talmud and Jewish writings. The eyewitness accounts and the religious texts of the New Testament are well qualified as historic documents. And so, but they were definitely influenced by things like that. All right, amazing.
Thank you. I hope it goes well.
Edith, thank you so much.
Yeah,
dude.
you're welcome.
So you got a band, right? You're learning?
Yeah, Burnt Norton. All right, let me plug myself. I play music. It is called Burnt Norton, like the T.S. Eliot poem, and it's folk music. And check it out. Thank you.
Okay, should we find it on YouTube or where will we find it?
Spotify, Bandcamp. I just came out with a new album called Little Gidding, and
Amazing. All right, bro. Thank you so much.